Hello, coders. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're from. It is episode 105 of the How to Code Well podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about service unavailable. What does that mean? What is a 503 error? And why on earth am I even talking about this stuff? So it is Thursday the 10th. I'm super happy to be here. I'm so sorry I didn't stream last Tuesday again. Just been so busy. Plus, with the evenings as light as they are, it's nice to get outside and do some gardening or take the dog for a walk. A longer evening walk up the hill or whatever. So apologies for not streaming on Tuesday. I'll try again next week, but I'm definitely going to be streaming on Sunday, this Sunday on Twitch. I'll talk about that more later. Let's get into the topic of today's show. So, service unavailable. This is a 503 HTTP error code. And the reason why this has been in the news recently is because Fastly, the one of a big CDN, unfortunately dropped the ball, shall we say, on their CDN, and there was a big outage caused by genuine configuration that was, when I say genuine, it was legitimate configuration from the point of view of their application. It was a configuration that one of their clients put in, and off of the back of a software update, I think it happened on the 12th of May, this software update came in. There was this software update didn't catch this issue or something like that, and basically on, what was it, what date was it, June the 8th, on Tuesday, a customer pushed a valid configuration change that included a specific circumstance, so an edge case, that triggered a bug which caused 85% of their traffic to go down. So it was a huge outage. Unfortunately, massive kudos to the DevOps team at Fastly, because in 49 minutes they managed to get 95% of all their traffic back up. All of their customers and clients back up. So, just a humongous undertaking there. I would imagine there's a lot of stress. I'm not here to poke fun at a company that is having these difficulties. I see this as a learning exercise, something that we can learn. And as soon as this happened, I then did some more research into 503s. I have been on the receiving end of a DevOps issue, several. I have also caused several, shall we say, in my career, and I know how stressful it is. So I'm not. This isn't a place for me to poke at a company. What I want to do today, though, is discuss what a 503 error is, and also provide perhaps some troubleshooting and some solutions to a 503. So a 503 is one of those, it's an exception in the category of a 500 error, meaning that it is a problem with the server. So just to give you a little bit of background with these error codes, you've got various different types or different categories. You've got the 200s, which are good things. Good things are happening with the 200 errors, or they're not errors, HTTP status codes. With 300s, 301s, 302s, that kind of stuff, it's all about redirection. And with 400s, it's something to do with the request. So like a bad request, maybe bad arguments were passed, so that's a 400. Or maybe, for instance, it's an access denied error, that's a 401. Or maybe it's a forbidden error, that's a 403. So that's a problem with the actual request. Whereas a 500 is more to do with that there is an issue on the server that the server is aware about and has recorded that in some exception, and it's throwing back a 500 or a 5 in this case, or a 502, or in this case it's 503, and each of these status codes corresponds to something, right? So in this case, service unavailable is from the W3C here. The server is currently unavailable to handle the request due to a temporary overloading or maintenance of the server. The implication is that a temporary condition which will be alleviated should sorry, I will say that again. It's because I haven't drank my beer yet, isn't it? The implication is that this temporary condition, which will be alleviated after some delay, if known, the length of the delay may be indicated by a retry-after header. So that's retry-header. And I've also seen other types of headers as well that you can use. If no retry-after is given, the client should handle, and this is important, the client should handle the response as it would for a normal 500 response. The problem with what happened with Fastly, or one of the issues with Fastly, in terms of an end user issue, is that a lot of viewers of these websites, these big websites, we're talking about a lot of news media went down, they were seeing just a white page with this error 503, service unavailable. Now, to techies like you and me, that means something, but to someone who isn't a techie, someone who isn't a developer, hasn't built a website before or isn't a programmer, they will see this service unavailable thing and freak out a little bit. Understandably, they may even think that it's being hacked. So you lose a lot of reputation by not handling these circumstances well. And even if, this could have been bounced to something else where it's branded in the same way the website would be branded, and it would give the user more of a human readable, digestible error that just says, very sorry, this has happened, we are on it, it's not your fault, that kind of thing, it's ours. So very apologetic, that kind of thing. Now, I haven't started my beer yet. Let's do that. Just diving in. Right. Cheers, everybody. One of these days, I'm going to do that, and it's just going to bubble up and go all over my desk and ruin my keyboard. Cheers. Happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. This is Jamestown. It's a little bit stronger. Well, it's much stronger than the midway I was on last week, but lovely nonetheless. Okay, so that's what a service unavailable means. That's what the 503 means. Let's talk about some of the causes of these things, because, one is one. It would be the CDN, but there are others. There are other issues. So one is a DDoS, so a distributed denial of service attack, right? So this is where the traffic, you've got a traffic spike, you've got a big spike of traffic that comes through, and someone is hammering your site constantly, and it's consuming all the resource, right? It's consuming all the resource on your server in terms of bandwidth, in terms of CPU, in terms of RAM, memory, all that stuff, and it's basically clogging up the pipes, if you will. And in doing so, the server will eventually overload, right? And when it does, or if it does, because if you haven't captured this whilst it's happening, then for some users, requests might be dropped, and therefore you may return 503 as a HTTP request, because this is all about temporary availability, right? So the server's still there, you haven't taken it away, but it's just unavailable to some requests. Now, obviously, if you've got a bad DDoS, then it's unavailable to all requests. But anyway, as a result, the server will respond with a 503 error code. Another cause could be that, quite a genuine cause here, an intentional cause sometimes would be that a server might be temporarily unavailable because it's going down for maintenance, right? And if that happens, one would like to think in this wonderful world of cloud computing that another server has already spun up to take its place or has already taken its place. But it's going through some sort of maintenance type thing. The worrying thing that DevOps people have to deal with are unexpected 503s. that's the issue here. So what we're going to do is talk about some troubleshooting. And before I do, I should say that this is live, as it is every Thursday here at 8 o'clock British summer time. And I can already see some of the questions coming through. So I will answer those as we go. But thank you ever so much, everybody, for joining. I do appreciate it. Let's talk about some troubleshooting, right? Some troubleshooting. Now, this is an error to do with the server. It's not a client-sided error. So it's got nothing to do with HTML. It's got nothing to do with CSS or client-sided JavaScript. Okay, so you can count the front end out on this. So that's one thing. And it's, you got to turn into a detective here, and you've got to try and, navigate the what could not be the cause here. So the first thing you want to do is check monitoring dashboards and graphs, right? So, well, first of all, you want to make sure that you have those in play. So, for instance, with How to Code Well recently, I have started using Sentry. I mean, I know the site as it isn't live, but I've got it in play. I've never used Sentry before, so I just want to try it out. But that captures error codes, exceptions, and whatnot, and gives you a nice stack trace and breaks it down by device type and all of that jazz. So anyway, if you don't have monitoring dashboards and tools, then do get them. But if you're hitting a 5.0 or you're having a 5.03, that's the first thing to do. Monitor your dashboards and graphs for resource-hungry trends, right? So these are trends where the graphs are going in a direction they shouldn't be, and perhaps they have gone in a direction very, very quickly. Or in some cases, especially when you've got memory leaks, maybe it's just a gradual burn all the way up to the top. And when it gets to a certain point, then the server starts to become temporarily unavailable. Okay, so the next thing is to check logs and find anything related to server errors. So checking your error logs, so your Apache error logs or your Nginx error logs. Also, certainly check your access logs, okay, because you might be seeing lots of requests from a single IP address or a certain group of IP addresses in crazy amounts of time, like incredible, like thousands of requests in a space of a minute. That kind of thing. That's a flag. That's sort of like, hang on a minute. Someone's doing something that they shouldn't be doing, and by doing that, they're causing my resource, my hardware, my server, my containers to get stressed and strained. And so this is causing this outage. Check if the server is going through any unexpected maintenance. So this is, I mean, you might have some updates that are updating unexpectedly. I mean, that's a problem in its own right. But that can happen. That can happen. Check if any firewall configuration, perhaps a firewall on your network is preventing the traffic flow. Maybe there's been an update to a firewall, and maybe a configuration has been changed, and maybe it's that is the bottleneck. Maybe you've got one service talking to another, microservices, for instance. Maybe you've got many microservices, and there is an ill-configured firewall in between. Okay, so check long-running scripts. So this is one that is very, very common. Okay, so check for long-running scripts that could cause memory leaks. So these are scripts that take a long time to run. They might be you might look at the code and go, well, it's pretty optimized, but because of the time in which it takes to go through, maybe it's doing like a massive database change or iterating through, hundreds of thousands of records in some ill-created loop or loops. And maybe you tested it on the first 100 and it all worked fine. And you did that in the space of a couple of minutes. And you thought, oh, that's fine. That's all good. And then you put it to production and you find out that actually you now need to do this on 500,000 records, So your test on 100 has now exploded into 500,000 of these things. And so you didn't capture the performance issues, the potential performance issues that you now have. And so over time, you're going to have memory leaks. And when it gets to a certain point, you're going to have an outage or you're going to have some serious problems. So check for long-running scripts. Also check for disk usage as well, which sounds a bit weird, right? But perhaps you're running out of swap space if that's been configured. Check, for instance, one that I've dealt with before, which was interesting, was one of a server that I had was running out of disk space because of the logging. It was logging too much, and it didn't remove the old logs, so there was no log rotation going. I was like, what? Why is this server full? Oh, okay. There's no room for any more error logs because I've got error logs from years and years ago. So yeah, it's those kind of small drip feedy kind of processes that just take a little bit of resource just as they go, but they don't give the resource back. Okay, so so I've talked about some of the troubleshooting and how to sort of see where the error is. The other one is solutions, right? So these are some things that you can do to try and solve a 503 error. So first of all, you want to stop jobs and cron jobs and anything that is running in the background. You want to make sure that you allocate the resource that you need to fulfill the traffic, the requests. So also what you should do is divert the traffic to a stable box. So you could do this through perhaps a load balancer. So spin up a box that works and doesn't have any fluff. It doesn't have any other processes running, right? So this is a time where you look at your monolith and go, well, actually, if these were all smaller resource-constrained containers or servers that did their one job and their one job well, then perhaps we wouldn't be having these issues. So, for instance, if you've got a monolith that contains both the database and the web server plus the cron jobs, then maybe you've got an issue there. Maybe this is an opportunity in a lessons learned type meeting afterwards to break some things down, because maybe you're finding that actually these you're getting these temporary 503 service unavailable issues happening every evening or every midnight every time a particular cron job runs, because you're using the resource in a heavy script, but that script's only running at a certain time. But if that script was running on a separate box outside of your so it's not a public facing thing, right? So it's somewhere in your network but isn't actually affecting the traffic, then that would be better, right? That would be good. So you want to divert the traffic to something that is nice and stable. You also want to scale your application horizontally, so not vertically, not like a monolith. You want to be scaling your containers. I keep saying containers because I keep expecting everyone to be using containers, but it could be VPSs. But you want to be scaling horizontally. by bringing different servers and containers to handle the traffic. Maybe this is a genuine issue, right? Maybe this is maybe the marketing department have put out a press release that your development team was not aware of. And maybe they've offered some incredible offer and they have sent millions of users to the website. And in doing so, they've caused this traffic spike. So maybe it's a genuine thing. Maybe it's a genuine thing. So you want to have a look and see if there's anything that could have caused that in a genuine way. Also, have an autoscaler. So going back to scaling here, have an autoscaler that keeps tabs on your traffic and keeps scaling horizontally when it needs to, but also you can set thresholds. So AWS does this really well, where you can set thresholds to say, look, when we hit this threshold, bring these boxes online. And then when it goes back to this threshold, remove these boxes and have a default number of boxes running. And lastly, but not least, is to reboot the bloody thing. So this is a classic on and off type scenario where you just turn the server off and then you turn it back on again. And by doing so, you free up the resource. It does work. It does work. But obviously make sure that you've diverted the traffic to somewhere else first before you've done this. The real problems are when you have to do this, right? Where the box just is refusing any form of connection, even if it's HTTP request connection or SSH connection. Maybe you just have to just go into some cloud dashboard and go reboot. Because that's the only thing you can do. Well, let's get on to some of the questions. Thank you very much. Martin958, a nice regular, thank you for joining again tonight. Would you ever be interested in learning JavaScript on your podcast? Would I be ever interested in learning? So in learning JavaScript, well, I've done a lot of JavaScript courses on the How to Code Well platform here. So I there's lots of JavaScript that I need to learn. But if you could come up with some examples, that would be very, very handy. I'm more than happy to talk about particular parts of JavaScript. JavaScript is an interesting beast because there's a lot of frameworks in JavaScript. There's far more frameworks in JavaScript than there is in other sort of programming sort of languages in web development. There's a lot of room for maneuver, and JavaScript is one of these very flexible languages, shall we say, that is used on all sorts of different platforms, and therefore has so many different challenges, more so than other programming languages such as PHP. So, for example, with JavaScript, you can write JavaScript on the server, although I really can't think why you would, but you can use Node.js. You can build mobile applications using JavaScript. And I've certainly done that. Which is great because you can write these JavaScript apps, and they can, in some cases, compile down to the native language. So in my experience, I've used things like Titanium and Alloy.js to do that. And so you end up with the iPhone equivalent and the Android equivalent of the application that you can post to their app stores, which is really, really great. JavaScript is very interesting. You've also, of course, got computer games built in JavaScript. People have even built operating systems with JavaScript. I don't know why, but you can. And so I think that just because you can, people do. Doesn't mean you should. The thing is, I'm a bit of an old school when it comes to. I'm like a fuddy-duddy when it comes to JavaScript, because I was taught JavaScript when JavaScript was never any of these things. JavaScript was JavaScript. JavaScript was an event handler for a website. It handled things like on-click events. It handled things like form validation, user events. There was no need to do any other thing. The thought of putting JavaScript on the server was just laughable, because you got so many other good programming languages to do that. And that's where I sort of draw the line. It's like, JavaScript should be done on the client. Because I can't think of a good reason why I would want to use JavaScript on the server. Not unless it was, if I was to ever do that, it would have to be TypeScript or something. Yeah. Although saying that, I have used JavaScript in serverless. I've certainly done that. Yeah. So bit of a contradiction there. So things like image resizing, I've definitely done. Use Node for that. Yeah, I don't know. I just feel very nervous putting anything npm-esque on a server. It just doesn't fill me full of confidence. Because the thing is, I can think of countless side projects that I've done in the past, and come back to them and then did a sort of an npm upgrade, and it's failed miserably. And you don't want that unreliability on the server. So it makes me feel a little nervous using Node. I honestly can't think of a good reason why you would want to do that. But anyway, that's just my argument. But JavaScript, so when I was at university, I did ActionScript. Can anyone remember ActionScript? That was fun. That was actually a really fun module. I loved doing that. That was really good. It was about building computer games, and we were using ActionScript and Flash. So the ActionScript was coding the Flash movies and having interactions. So you would build Flash games, and you would be able to control parts of the game using, like, for instance, the game that I created. You could use the keyboard to change direction of the thing that you were controlling, and that was all running through ActionScript, which is very similar to JavaScript, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, reminiscing now. So ActionScript is no more, because obviously Flash is no more. But that wasn't my first introduction to JavaScript. I did a whole module at college where we were going through JavaScript events, and we were doing things like form validation and on-click events and other things like that. So yeah, I've got a love-hate relationship with JavaScript. I think it's, yeah. And I find it funny that there is so many frameworks out there for JavaScript. I really do. It seems like sometimes there's a new JavaScript framework every week, which is interesting. I suppose it's because JavaScript is used in all various different places, and so you've got various different needs and requirements. Yeah, but I also find npm is a challenge to use sometimes, and perhaps not the most reliable package manager for programming. I mean, I know that say Go and PHP does things very, very differently, and so does Python with their pip. So yeah, I look at JavaScript and I look at everything else, and I try and work out what JavaScript is, where JavaScript is going to go, and I can't work it out. Whereas with the other programming languages, they seem to have more of a defined path and a defined motive of why they are doing what they do. And they're doing that thing well because of it suits the language. Whereas there's a ton of things that I've seen and used with JavaScript, and I'm like, couldn't this have been done using a language that is best suited? It's almost like JavaScript is a hammer, right? And every problem looks like a nail. But anyway, that's my take. Thank you ever so much for watching here on the YouTubes and listening on the podcasts. I will be putting episode 104, which is all about dry, on the podcast player tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So go check that out if you haven't listened to that already, and that will be, or if you haven't seen it already on the YouTubes. So that will be on Spotify. It'll be on iTunes. And all those good places. So that's the How to Code Well podcast, which this is. And of course, do check us out if you want to come on board. If you're listening on the podcast right now and you're like, hey, I want to join in the discussion, then this happens every Thursday at 8 o'clock, 2000 hours British summertime, live on YouTube. How to Code Well is the channel name. Thank you ever so much for watching. Happy coding, everybody, and I'll see you again on Twitch on Sunday at 14:30 British summertime. Take care. Bye bye. Cheers.